What's going on, everybody? It's Jamie,
And John.
and welcome to the A-To-Zed Reseller podcast. Okay, so how you been doing this week, John? Everything's been good with you?
Yeah, man, it's been a good week. Not a whole lot too crazy or exciting to go over, but yeah, overall, not bad. Reselling wise, personal wise, been a pretty good week. Yourself?
Nice. Yeah, it's been a good week. I've got a little bit to complain about. I'm sure you've seen my Etsy store got shut down. I don't know if you caught that video or not.
I did. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a shame.
yeah, it's definitely one of those things where in retrospect, I can look back and I could see the flags, and I just ignored them based off of listening to some other people that sell on Etsy and do the same thing. I was talking to somebody at the bins, and they gave me a perfect analogy for this, and they said, you can speed every day, but there's no one to blame. Pretty much no one to blame when you get the speeding ticket, right? Like you can get away with it 90% of the time, but
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
one of those situations, unfortunate, and you just kind of see what's going to happen. And I think in my not my next video, but I think maybe Saturday's video or something like that, I do kind of touch on what I'm going to do going forward. But yeah, pretty tough break on Etsy. Everything else has been good. Sales have been good. You know, nothing bad happened in the personal life, so nothing to complain
Nice.
about really, except for a little bad luck with Etsy.
Yeah. I'll just, I know it wasn't really something we were planning to talk about today, but I'll just talk about Etsy real quick. I
Yeah.
never bothered getting into Etsy. I was going to, and then I had some kind of like, I don't know, I just had this right as I was about to get everything set up and start listing. I was like, I don't know if I'll even want to bother. And then I just never bothered. So I haven't gotten on the Etsy train. I think it's probably for the best. Just one more thing for me to do.
So one of the things I guess we plan on talking about this week is lotting things up and bundling things up, and it really depends on how you're buying things, I suppose. Maybe seen in a recent video of mine, I bought a whole pile of stuff, and there's a good opportunity to lot things up because I'm getting a lot of things cheap. It's a way to move more inventory. Sometimes that's the best thing to do, and sometimes it's obviously a lot better to keep things individually. Depends on so many factors. But how do you feel about that? I know with video games in particular, you tend to lot things up. We talked about that privately just a few days ago, but I'm interested in your thoughts on lots and bundles.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like to do lots and bundles as much as I can because I think it's a good way to move maybe some less desirable items along with some more desirable items. So, for example, one of the things that I sell a lot of is like Nintendo Wii's, and so if I see a bunch of cheap $1 or $2 games for Nintendo Wii, I tend to pick them up even if they're not worth a lot more than that because they help to move consoles and put big bundles together. So, in that case, it definitely makes sense. Um, otherwise, like there have been times though where I've been at like my local thrift store and they've got 15 of the exact same Boston Marathon running shirt, new with tags, and it's all the same size. Well, then I'm just doing a multi-quantity listing because it makes sense to do that if you've got, a bunch of the same thing. But typically, yeah, I love doing bundles. I think people like getting a good deal. I think it helps, justify shipping costs if you buy 5, 6 cheap items, but you split the shipping over all of those as opposed to maybe one good item or something like that. And especially on Poshmark, I really like doing bundles on Poshmark because I will literally give one item away if it means I sell 3 other items. It's just, and that works for me and my buy cost on things. But yeah.
Yeah, I do enjoy the bundle feature on Poshmark. I wouldn't say that it's super successful for me. I will send out offers, and when I get one, it's usually one I'm more than happy with, but I don't get a lot of those. But as far as eBay goes, bundling things up for me, like toys, sometimes it's just because I want to be lazy and just bundle up a whole bunch of the same thing and not have to look it up. I've definitely done that with Skylanders where I knew there might have been a few good ones. The same thing with like harder to find now, but you used to be able to find like Littlest Pet Shops and all thrift stores and bundle those up and sell it for good money, like $100 for a bundle type thing. And yeah, I like doing that. I mean, same thing, like you can use better figures, better characters to get rid of some of the old stuff, bring sell some of it all together. Because if I'm picking stuff up at yard sales, I'm probably going to pick up a bin full of toys and figure out what I have later, honestly. And then you can sort of pick at a thrift store, you can kind of pick a little more smaller bundles anyway, or bunches together. But yeah, I definitely like doing that. to, maximize profit for sure. And it usually makes it easier to get rid of stuff in the long run.
It does. And, getting back, that's a good example of like the Skylanders, the Little's Pet Shops, or even like, with the cheap kind of shovelware Wii games along with the good ones.
Yep.
I think that people recognize that. I think as a buyer, it's nice to know, okay, I can get a bunch of this stuff. And there's maybe a couple things that aren't that great, but volume speaks to people, right? Like when you see a massive lot of something, even if there's a few bad ones in there, it still feels nice to be able to get a whole bunch of stuff. And, typically what I would do, let's say I had 30 little toys or figures or something like that, and I knew maybe 10 of them were good and the other ones weren't so good. I mean, I'm not going to look up all of those cheap ones and see if they're worth $2 or $3 or whatever. I'm going to take my good ones. I'm going to really comp those and build my price around those, and then maybe add like whatever I could stomach for all the other ones. Maybe it's $1 a piece or something. And it's just to add that little bit of value back in, but it's really to move those valuable ones that, that's where you're seeing your profit, right?
Yeah, for sure. And a part of that too, it can be sometimes people tend to, and I totally understand this. They ask too much money for the things that they're selling based off of the idea that, this one is worth money and whatever. People are a lot more easy to get rid of stuff, or they're just, I don't know. It just, if you offer, I'll just take everything off your hand. It just seems to be such a burden off of their back, right? That they're just more willing to take less money, and they don't really sort of think about maybe how much each item's going to cost at that point. It's just like, oh, you'll take it all for $50 and it's out of my way. Okay, sure.
Exactly.
Instead of bickering over $3 for this game or $5 for this game. So yeah, you can also, make better buys bundling things up.
Yeah. Yeah. I take that same approach as a buyer when I'm looking to buy a lot that I'm going to flip, and as a seller, because I recognize the benefit in both ways, right?
Yep. Yeah. Now we've bundled all this stuff up. We've tried to list it, get it sold on eBay, get it sold on Poshmark. Shipping is going to be the next big challenge we have. And, every time that I even talk about shipping on my channel or any other channel for that matter, people tend to stop and listen, because if you're just getting into reselling, it's the hardest thing to learn. So I think we have different models in shipping. I think you're more of a calculated shipping guy, and I'm more of a flat rate shipping guy. I think we'll both kind of have an opportunity to explain both and say why both might be better. But I would say for anybody new just starting, calculated shipping is probably the way to go. If you don't understand shipping, flat rates is going to be way too dangerous, and you're going to lose your shirt for sure, at least once or twice. You could even do everything the right way and still lose your shirt. So it's just part of it. But yeah, what are your thoughts on shipping if you're just getting started, or even for the seasoned guys out there? Some tips that might help them.
Yeah, I mean, it is a beast here in Canada. Shipping is not as easy to master, let's say, as some of those U.S. sellers that we watch, where they're talking about, oh my God, it's going to cost $7 to ship this. That's hilarious. I wish I could ship most things for $7. No, I mean, like you mentioned, I like doing calculated shipping. And I think that the big reason why that works best for me is because I am in rural Nova Scotia. And so my shipping rates sending something to Ontario or, Edmonton or out to BC, my shipping is going to cost way more than your shipping is, being in the center of the country. It's just the way that it is. But right now, with calculated shipping on eBay, because eBay and Canada Post have negotiated rates, I do get some good discounts. And now that I can actually buy UPS labels through eBay as well, UPS right now is offering like 70% off and stuff like that. So because there's often special discounts and stuff that can be purchased right through the eBay app, that's why I go with calculated, because chances are I am going to get a better rate than if I just choose some flat rate or try to use flat rate boxes or whatever else. But it might be very different for somebody who has options like yourself. You've got Stallion Express, you've got all these other like third-party carriers and stuff that can give way better rates. Yeah. Now, I will mention, though, obviously the calculated shipping that only applies to eBay. I do think it's the best bet for somebody who's just starting out, just so that you, even if it doesn't like change a whole lot in how much you're charging for shipping and all of that, at least now you're getting that recognition. You start to learn, like, okay, this item weighs this much, this is going to fit in this size of a box. Like, you're learning weights and dimensions just through handling so many different things, whether it's clothing or hard goods. Like, it's amazing how many times I'll pick something up, before I put it on the scale, I'll just be like, this weighs 1.2 kilograms. Put it on the scale, it's 1.189 or something like that, you know? So I'm getting really good at it. And I think that's a skill that people should have, even if they don't necessarily have to use it a lot. I think for resellers, it's good to have, you know, an understanding of what things weigh, or what size of a box it might go in.
Yes.
But the only other thing I'll mention is that obviously we don't need to worry about that on Poshmark at all, because Poshmark is that flat rate shipping, unless you go over the, I think it's 2.5 kg, which is like 5 point something pounds to start.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, you can ship out a 5-pound box without having to pay the extra couple dollars to upgrade your label. So you don't really need to worry about it on Poshmark very often. But yeah, that's my approach. And I think it is because I'm so rural East Coast that calculated makes the most sense to take advantage of those eBay label discounts.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you know, I was sitting back trying to listen and think of it. And you know, if somebody brand new green to this has no idea, the one thing is, you know, we know what calculated shipping is. Most people know what it is. But like, essentially, you're going to take, you have to enter the dimensions that you think it's going to be. So if you think you're going to ship it in a, you know, a 12 by 6 by 4 box, you need to put those dimensions in. It's probably, and you're probably dealing in centimeters. I'm talking inches, but
Right.
And then weight.
By 16 by 9.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And then you want an estimated weight, and then that way they can do their best from somebody, you know, from you to me. How much is it going to cost? It calculates it based on that, right? I think to me and you, that makes a lot of sense. But as I was sitting back and listening, I'm thinking, well, if you didn't know what it is, I guess maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Actually, you know what? That's a great point. And I'll add this as well. You do not need some expensive commercial scale or anything like that. I mean, I have a $15 kitchen scale that I bought from Canadian Tire while it was on sale. So it actually only cost me $7.99. And that's what I weigh all my stuff on. Now, of course, it's just a small little square. So, you know, if I put a shirt on that, it's going to drape over the edge and I'm not going to get the proper weight. You put a box on top, you tear the weight, you zero it off at that point, put your shirt on top of the box. So you're getting the actual weight. And yeah, I mean, that's going to do most things. The only things that like that scale, that tiny little crappy kitchen scale isn't going to be good enough for is like if I'm sending out a really heavy box, like a big typewriter or something, because, you know, its max weight is something like 15 pounds or something like that. And it's just not going to be able to do it. But you know, in the very rare instances, that's not going to work for you. But yeah, you don't need to go out and get expensive equipment. You don't need some like fancy commercial trade scale. Little kitchen scale from Canadian Tire, or hell, if they sell them in the dollar store and they're good for 5 pounds, that's probably going to do most of your items.
Right? Yeah. Oh, for sure it is. Yeah. And yeah, I think even myself, I only just have, I do have a scale that'll go up to 50 pounds, but same thing. I think I bought it on Amazon for $25.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing special. And really, you know, when I'm shipping like a little CRT television, that's probably the most heavy thing that'd be shipping out. And it does the trick. You definitely don't need anything big, crazy expensive. But yeah, so I'm obviously a big fan of flat rates. Even before I started using third-party shippers, I was using just Canada Post, but I was using the small solutions card, the Canada Post discount card. At that point, I actually built up pretty good discount, so I was getting some decent rates just using that. So you just kind of have to figure out when you're going to do calculating, averaging things out. So for me, you know, I do sell a little bit of everything. As I look around the room here, there's a little bit of everything, but the things I see most often go out of here are clothing and shoes, and video games, like something of that size, right? So I kind of know the size boxes I use. And then over time, you really do start to realize that shipping out a pair of shoes within Canada, for me, it's going to be Well, it can be all over the place. It could be as cheap as $9 or it might be as expensive as 15, which is really on the inexpensive side when you're looking at Canada Post, where that's probably going to be 15 to closer to 20, depending how far. Um, and t-shirts the same way. I can usually get away with charging $9 for shipping. And I think that becomes confusing when people watch my channel and they don't understand why it's $9 for me to ship it, but them trying to ship a t-shirt, sometimes it's almost $20 and it becomes
Right.
frustrating, right? And I mean, it is because currently that I am using Stallion Express, so I'm getting deep discounts through Canada Post and smaller courier companies, and then I can ship with United States Postal Service labels and get like your lightweight United States Postal Service is like super cheap. Like some things, like a video game, for instance, is like $5 to $8, and
Yeah.
that's all it's going to cost, right? But if you haven't been doing it long enough and you don't kind of understand when you list the item how much it's going to cost, those flat rates will bite you in the butt for sure, because you have to create like a shipping policy. So I have a t-shirt shipping policy, and it just says if you're in Canada, you're going to pay me, I think it's set to maybe t-shirts is maybe $9, and I think it might be $8 for the US. So anybody in the US, I think shoes is set to $12, and I think it's set to $9 US, which is crazy because you think, wow, it should be more to the US, but it's just not.
Yeah.
um, but there's so many companies out there that do similar things. I'm not by any means, I'm not sponsored by Stallion Express. They don't give me any money. I have a referral code that I could get, a few dollars if somebody signed up for it. But, companies like Chit Chats do the same type of things. I used Swift Post in the past, but they no longer do cross-border shipping. So that's why I no longer use that company. Yeah, but shipping can be pretty challenging when you're first starting. That's why I think Poshmark, when you get the prepaid label, is a great way to start. And they've opened up where you don't just have to sell clothing. You can sell. The other day I listed a VCR in there just to see if it would sell. I don't know if it'll sell on there or not. I think I've definitely sold like Funko Pops on Poshmark as well. But that's a really nice way to get going if you're just not sure about the shipping. And then once you get comfortable with like what type of things do sell, moving to eBay is not so scary because you kind of understand the listing part of it and how to maybe value things. And then you got to learn the shipping aspect, which, like I said, if you're just starting, even though I am 100% just flat rates, I would say use calculated shipping when you're starting. And you know, there's no real reason not to use it unless you're getting super deep discounts that are going to be way cheaper than it's going to calculate it for you on through eBay.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that is a very fair point. And yeah, I agree. I think that starting off with calculated is the best bet for everybody. And then, just so you don't lose your shirt and get discouraged early on. But once you get going, like, so what your average is going to be. Like you've obviously chosen those numbers, those flat rates based upon your experience.
Yeah.
You're going to maybe lose $2 here, gain $2 there. So it balances out. It doesn't really matter. Um, you know, Two other things I'll add to that, I would say, is because I lived here. I lived in this new house where I moved in 2021. I lived here for almost 2 years before I realized I had a third party shipper that could handle, UPS, FedEx Ground, Purolator, Canpar, all of these other companies, and they're like 2 minutes down the road from me. I didn't even know they were there. So, it's a lot of these smaller businesses, maybe just they don't advertise, like you just don't know, right? Especially in a rural area like I am. So definitely, if you're getting into reselling, yeah, Canada Post is an option. Obviously, that's there for everybody, but get to know what's available in your area. You might be able to, like, yeah, the UPS labels that I could print out on eBay don't help me if I don't have someone, like, if I don't have UPS in my area. There's no
Right.
UPS store within 2 hours of me.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So that's
so like it's a good thing they are down the road because I can actually use UPS. Um, the other thing I will say is if you do go into calculated shipping and you're on eBay and you're doing that, one great tip as well, I didn't realize this at first and then it came to my attention. I kind of waffled on it a little bit, but you can go into your shipping settings, into your account settings, and go into shipping preferences, and you can choose to pass along any discounts on shipping that are currently going on through eBay. So if there is a discount through UPS or or they've negotiated some new rates with eBay and Canada Post, and they're on promo period for 3 months or whatever it is. You can choose to pass those things along to your buyer so that they pay the actual shipping cost. They're not paying way up here and it only costs you this. I mean, hey, if you want to keep that extra money in pocket, great. If you want to like have that sale and then refund them a couple dollars, that's obviously your choice. But for me, I do like to pass that along and just they pay what the actual cost is, because I think that generates more sales.
Yeah.
I think they're getting a lower shipping cost. It's naturally going to mean more sales. So
Yeah.
that's a tip. I think anybody should go in there and make that decision what they want to do, but just know that option's there.
Yeah. I think anytime, especially here in Canada, anytime people can save money on shipping, it's a good thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a ton of people out there super surprised too. I still, even to this day, I've, on eBay get messages from people who obviously don't buy a lot online, and they almost don't even believe I have some of the cheaper shipping rates that I see out there. And I still get people question me all the time that maybe the shipping's too high. It's like, well, it's not free. That's for sure.
I get that all the time, man, especially since I'm out here. If I want to send like I want to send like a Wii bundle or something with a bunch of games, and it's maybe it's in like a 14 by 10 by something box or something. It'd be bigger than that, I guess. But if it was in a big box and it's going to weigh 10 pounds or something, and I'm going to send that to Edmonton, like
Yeah.
that's a $35 shipping cost.
Yep.
And people are like, wow, I would buy this, but you're charging twice what somebody in Ontario is charging. I'm like, well, that's because I'm in Nova Scotia. Like, it's just the way that it works, right? We
Yeah.
don't have that. The US rates are obviously much closer. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of difference, like the further away, like whatever your region is, but it's way, way closer.
Yeah, the other thing I think to keep in mind, and shout out to Chris from Chris's Treasure Chest. When I had him on my channel, he said this, and I really believe he's right, to be honest. Um, Shipping really isn't a factor. If somebody really wants your item and it's a good item and it's not saturated, they'll pay the shipping. I know
Yep.
if you ever see his What Sold videos, I don't know if you ever watch his channel before. Sometimes people will buy stuff from all over the world and they have no problem paying $100, a couple $100 if it's a bigger item. He was a very firm believer of, shipping shouldn't be the factor. You're selling the item. If somebody wants it, they'll pay whatever the shipping is, as long as you're being fair about it. And that's what the shipping costs. And I'm like, after he said that and I thought about it, I definitely agree with that. It's not really, it is a factor on some items that are very just common. If I could buy a video game from anybody, I'm not going to buy it from you because the shipping's too much money. But if it's an item that's more rare and it's just going to cost more money to ship, people will just pay the shipping. They're not even going to blink an eye.
No, exactly. I mean, it is what it is, right? It's a factor, but it's also just a fact. Like it's shipping is shipping, and I think actually, you know what? There's people who are big proponents of offering free shipping and just trying to build that into their price. And I will never do that because it's just too. I think there's just too much room for error there, and it's too much opportunity just to get kind of shafted a little bit, if you will. And I agree with that philosophy that shipping just is what it is. So yeah, that's a good point by Chris. I'm glad you brought that up.
So now that we've talked a little bit about shipping, what were some of your better sales for this week?
Man, I don't know. I had some okay sales this week. It wasn't a huge sales week, really. Like, it was kind of still at that sort of maybe 75 to 80% of what I would kind of be hoping for. But there were a couple of quick flips. So I'm going to say that I've got 2 this week, which means it's more work for you in editing to have to pop 2 things up if you choose to do them both. But one of the things I did share in the reseller group that we've got there on Facebook, that was the Affliction shirt. So it was the long sleeve Henley, and it had like the all over affliction and crosses and spell outs and stuff in like a faux leather. And that sold really, really fast. I had it listed, I think, on eBay for about 70, and on Poshmark, usually I do about 10% more. So I think 77 on Poshmark. And it sold, I think, next day for $59. I took an offer, and shirts cost me, $6 something. So That was a really good quick flip. And then the other one was a Patagonia. Try to get the model correct here. It was a Patagonia Torrent shell, I think it was called. H2 No, like very, just this like wind rain jacket, like this very lightweight, just kind of shell type thing. Good for running, good for being out hiking or whatever. Basically, like wearing an umbrella. And that was a good sale because I was about to check out at my local thrift store and I saw them come out with a new rack. And I was like, nope, turned my cart around, went right over. First thing I grabbed before someone else could get to the rack was this Patagonia jacket. So after taxes, I paid like $8.30 or something for it. And I sold it within a couple of hours, I believe, for $69.99. So, you know, it was really nice flip, and just the way it kind of played out was pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, that's a couple of things. Patagonia is obviously a well-known brand. Affliction, if you don't know it, you should. It sells really well, but to have a couple of those just move so fast in 1 week, that's what I love. I just love moving product.
Yeah, and I'm right on the very similar path here. That's exactly. I walked into a thrift store, found a Carhartt jacket. I think it was about $15 or something like that. It was a, one of the what is it? It's not duck fabric. What is it? The canvasy kind of fabric, like
Oh
a
yeah, yeah, almost
jacket.
like a fire hose canvas type of deal. Yep.
So that type of jacket, relaxed fit, excellent condition. I did bring it home, threw it in the wash machine just because I generally do like to wash. I know other people have different ideas about washing clothes or not that you get from thrift stores. I did wash it, got it listed the very next morning, and by lunch it sold on Poshmark for, I think it was still the best offer though, because I have my Posh Sidekick set up to, I think after 2 hours it'll start sending off offers to likers.
Okay.
I think I listed it for like $92, and I think it wound up selling for 79 or something like that.
Yep.
Which sometimes I know you can go now and modify your, you can exclude items from offers, but I just haven't everything set up to send out offers. So yeah, super happy with that. Those type of things definitely get you excited about listing more items. When you list something and it sells right away for good money, you're like, yeah, I gotta get more of those.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, I mean, the reality is cash is king. You know, cash flow is absolutely necessary to any business. So, yeah, maybe we could hold out for a few more dollars for those items. You know, some people might say, oh, well, if it sold that quick, you didn't, you know, you left money on the table. But the reality is, I just dropped $400, $500, $600, $700 in inventory. I want to get some of that money back.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I made $50 profit versus maybe the $60 profit I could have held out for, like, to me, having that 50 now is better than 62 weeks from now.
Right? Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And I find that with items, I typically list. I'm interested to see if you think this is like something you do as well. So things that I know that are worth more money, I'll usually list them just a little bit too high, hoping that when the offers come in, I kind of get what I want, and it just settles, and I'm happy with it with the offer. Where I would say cheaper items, I'm probably on the lower end just because I want to sell it and not sit on it forever. I don't know if you use a similar model when you list things.
I am exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, again, same deal. I'm not in the storage business. I'm in the reselling business. So yeah, those cheaper items, those $20 to $30 items, I don't want to just collect hundreds of those things. You know, I want to move them, make my $10 profit or whatever it is. But yeah, those higher items, I will typically, unless there's some reason why I should be a little bit lower, like, you know, if I want to be at the lower end of the range of the sold comps I'm seeing because maybe I've got a little condition issue or something like that. But yeah, typically I'll aim a little bit high, and I'll usually monitor that item for maybe the first, 3 to 5 days or so, kind of come back to it after a few days. I mean, if I'm really just not getting any views or any traction on it at all, then I know, all right, nobody's seeing this. I just put it too high. And then usually after those first like 3 to 5 days, I will go in and drop it down if it's got literally nothing. But, if it's getting some offers, or I can send out offers, or it's getting some views and stuff, maybe it's picked up a watcher, I'll let it go a little bit and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to you talk there, and I'm thinking, That's interesting. I know for myself, and maybe you would do this too. I was just thinking if I was getting no traction, I probably would end the listing, sell similar, and then relist it with a new price just so that it's brand new and doesn't get buried. But yeah, I have done that before where something that I thought was going to be more desirable is, maybe based off a title or my price or whatever just doesn't get any. And that's, I tend to find that works a little better because if I just adjust the price, sometimes it doesn't really maybe just doesn't get pushed back out in the algorithm, or who knows, right? Like we're all just kind of guessing what eBay does, but I just find that's my typical go-to if I'm going to adjust a price after I've just listed.
Yeah, that's fair. And the reality is nobody knows what eBay is doing, including eBay. But at least not with their algorithm. But usually if it's only been like 3 or 5 days or something, depending on what it is, I will usually just go in and lower the price a little bit. And typically then it's gonna, I'll keep an eye on it again. But there have been times where definitely I think to myself, you know what, I've missed the window of opportunity on this, and I will do that. I'll end and sell similar just to get it back out fresh, so that if somebody has alerts turned on for a certain item, or maybe they've got some keywords saved in an eBay search so that they get an email when a new one is listed. Yeah, they're going to see my item again. Maybe they already saw it the last time it was listed too high. They're not getting a notification that I've lowered my price because eBay isn't that advanced. So now that person, maybe that was looking for exactly the item I'm selling, they're not going to see that.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I know that's sort of how I think about it when I am adjusting prices of, especially of things that have been listed recently. I think the other thing we wanted to touch base on this podcast was a little bit about time management, but a little bit about testing and cleaning items as well. So like when you pick stuff up, one of the things people don't factor in sometimes anyway, or I know I've been guilty of this for sure. I'll pick stuff up that I know needs a cleaning. And I'll just set it to the side because I don't want to deal with it. So like things are going to take up your time. How much of that weighs in your decision to buy things? Are things you just are going to leave because you don't want to deal with it, or you do have to, because you do have to value your time, right? If you start putting in multiple, if you put in an hour on something, well, there's if you're expected to make $20+ an hour, well, you've just lost $20, monkeying
Yeah.
around with this item.
Yeah, I as a part-time reseller who's doing this in addition to a full-time job and as many hobbies as I can fit in the run of a day, I do really value my time more than anything else. Honestly, like I feel like it is even more valuable than money in a lot of cases. Obviously, you need to pay the bills, but that is my biggest priority: is making sure that my quality of life is high. And the very last thing I want to do is be cleaning stuff. Like I really don't want to do it. So there are definitely a lot of times where I'll see something and I'll be like, oh man, this is worth 50 or 60 bucks. If I didn't have to put an hour into cleaning it, and it stays there, the next person can deal with it, because I know that especially in clothing, and I do feel very grateful that I've got good sourcing opportunities near me. I know that there's plenty of other inventory for me to pick up. So I don't need to worry about it. Maybe if I was in a little bit more scarce of an inventory area or something, or I didn't have that like good clothing business model that I could work with, I'd be a little bit less selective. But no, I will definitely pass on things if I need to put any amount of time in them. But that said, I also do recognize the value in having certain items for sale and having, so like, well, here's an example. All right. I might pass on the pair of sneakers that I really don't want to scrub and clean and spend time with, even if I could make $20 from them, because yeah, that 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, that's going to come into my profits. But then I might spend an hour taking apart a Nintendo 64, cleaning everything out all inside, doing all the pins and taking the controllers apart and swapping out the sticks and doing a complete refurbed kind of thing, because number one, I absolutely love that stuff. I mean, I'm wearing a Nintendo 64 hoodie right now. So I actually enjoy that. That's something I like doing with my time. But then also that's just going to boost the value so much more. Like, you can actually put in your listing refurbished item, and that's going to be like a very that's going to be a very desirable thing. So Yeah, it's got to be something that I like, I guess.
Yeah. I know for me, I would like to sit here and tell you that I wouldn't pick up items that need cleaning, but I know I'd be lying. I just, I, I don't know. I get so excited in the moment, and I don't know how to turn that off. I wish there was just a button.
Yeah.
I see something and I see potential, and I'll pick it up. And but that being said, though, that's a good way to start to build a death pile that you don't want. Like I've donated bins of clothing before that I had good intentions with, or shoes in particular. Um, I kind of put some things in place with shoes in particular where they have to hit a certain criteria for me to want to pick them up. And I had to do that because I would just pick up garbage that I was spending way too much time on, that wound up being just a problem. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I will clean clothing and shoes, but there has to be a limitation of how dirty, unless it's super rare and valuable. Um, Video games, I don't test a lot of video games, to be honest. If the disc looks good, usually assume. If it's a super fun game, I might go play a few rounds. Um, but yeah, cartridges, same thing. I don't have. You might, because I know you collect a lot of games. I don't have every system available to test, so I don't always test cartridges either. But tend to not say tested either in the titles unless they truly have
Mhm.
been tested, or you can physically see there's no damage to the disc and it's not a concern, right? But yeah, that all does take up time as well. If you're going to go through and test every single game, every single item, if you're buying vintage electronics, especially, you really do got to make sure you have to make sure everything's working on there properly. And there's some of that old stuff is pretty finicky, and a lot of things can go wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely. With the video game stuff, I mean, I honestly barely test anything unless it was something that was coming from my own collection or something that, like you said, looks really cool. I kind of want to play this for a few minutes and see what
Yeah,
it's all about because I might want to just keep it for myself. Or if the disc does look questionable or something like, I mean, GameCube discs, for example, they can look like they went through a grinder and they're still going to work most of the time, but I still like to test them out just to make sure, especially since like, even cheap GameCube games are pretty much like $20. Um, so it's worth testing those things out. I've got a GameCube really handy that I can do. But yeah, when it comes to cartridges or discs that look good, I don't bother with that because I think 99% of the time you're not going to have a problem. And honestly, I mean, if somebody said, "Hey, if I didn't put tested in the title, um, chances are I'm not going to spell out, oh, this is not tested." And I'm like, it's not like I'm selling the game for parts or something.
yeah,
But 9 times out of 10, if something looked really questionable to me, and for whatever reason I didn't test it, or maybe I just didn't have time, maybe I wasn't even home at the time, maybe I was away dog sitting or something, and I wanted to get it listed. If somebody says there was an issue with it, then I'm going to tend to believe them. But I really just don't run into those issues, so I don't know. I don't do a lot of testing with the video games because yeah, I think it's just I'm not going to say it's pointless, but I think most games are really robust and you can just kind of tell, but that comes from experience as well. So like, being a gamer myself, I just kind of feel very confident in making that call, whether or not it needs to be tested. All right, everybody, thanks very much for watching. This is episode 2 already. I know it's just 2, but it still feels kind of cool because we've been doing this a little bit. We had 4 episodes before starting up this channel. So really enjoying it so far. Hope you guys are too. We want to thank you guys for joining and watching and following along on this journey. Hopefully we're answering some questions that are helpful to you. If not, please let us know down below, or if you've got any questions, put them there as well. And we'll see you in the next video.